We are just a couple weeks away from NFL training camp starting, and today is the best time to get some Dynasty trade targets on the cheap. We just did a sweeping update to our Dynasty trade value chart, which of course is available at flockfantasy.com. And today we're going to break down some of the hard buys, hard sells, soft buys, and soft sells at every fantasy position so that you guys, if you're contending, you can get some production. If you're rebuilding, you can look to buy low on some value accumulation players. This one should be a fun one, so stick around right to the end. If you enjoy, get some value from it, leave a like, comment down below any of your thoughts, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and like I said, if you want access to this trade value chart, it is available in the link in the description at flockfantasy.com, promo code FSE to start your free trial and get 30% off. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, so we started with wide receivers in the last time I did this video back in May. We're going to start with running backs this time, and we're going to go over to the hard buys. And hard buys basically just means that in my rankings, they're significantly higher than they're ranked in our community rankings on Flock as well as on Keep Trade Cuts. So let's start with the hard buys. We got Isaiah Pacheco, Chase Brown, Audric Estime, and Ezekiel Elliott. So a bunch of guys for every different flavor of Dynasty team here. Isaiah Pacheco is one of my dudes this year in all formats, Redraft, Best Ball, and Dynasty. He is the lead back for the Kansas City Chiefs. So let's start there. For the next 2 seasons, he's got 2 more years on his rookie deal. There is now speed in this offense to open up the rushing lanes, open up the boxes for him. Xavier Worthy, the fastest guy in combine history, was drafted in the first round. They bring in Marquise Brown as well. Rashee Rice, once he gets off his suspension, whenever that comes, he is going to help open up that offense as well. This offense is going to be much better than it was last year. We know that Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and all these guys can produce a great offense. Isaiah Pacheco was top 7 in the NFL in red zone touches last year, despite missing 3 games and the offense not being that good. The Chiefs should be much better at moving the ball into the red zone with Worthy, with Marquise coming in, with Rashee Rice, with Travis Kelce hopefully healthy this year. What if he gets an extension too? Isaiah Pacheco, from a dynasty perspective, is the type of guy that could get a small extension like Ramondre Stevenson got and suddenly be valued super, super highly in dynasty rankings. So with Isaiah Pacheco, I look at the redraft projection is great. People are undervaluing him in redraft and in best ball. And I think if he has a great season, he could get an extension and be with this team long term. I am hitching my wagon to Pacheco in all fantasy football formats. Same thing goes for Chase Brown, who is literally just the best back on his team. That's why I'm in on Chase Brown. Zach Moss was nothing prior to last year. Getting into the Shane Steichen scheme in Indianapolis is going to elevate the play of middling talents like Zach Moss. I do not view him as a significant threat to Chase Brown. Yeah, he got the contract, he got the money, he's probably going to get the first crack at starting for the Cincinnati Bengals, but I do think that Chase Brown, as the season goes along, could be an absolute league winner. Great athlete, great offense, pass catching upside, flashed efficient big plays as a rookie. Good gamble to take as a mid to late second round rookie pick as the cost that you'd have to pay for Chase Brown. Perfect 0 RB target in a startup draft as well. So he is a guy I'm hard buying right now. Audric Estime, I've talked about in other videos. Ultimate sleeper in all formats. In the prospect model, the FSE prospect model that we have, he is the highest graded day 3 running back to be selected since 2016. Sean Payton is a running back kingmaker. He had an RB1 in his backfield 9 of the last 12 seasons. Estime could be the Mark Ingram of this backfield if Javonte Williams continues to deal with injuries or falls out of favor with the team. Jaleel McLaughlin is there. He's definitely intriguing, but this team is going to need a big-bodied lead ball carrier. One of Javonte Williams or Audric Estime is going to be a significant value. Even if it's Javonte this year, he is actually a free agent after the 2024 season, so we could see Audric Estime work into the starting job as soon as next year as well. So he's a great pick from a redraft sleeper angle, handcuff, whatever you want to call him, and also a great long-term pick because he could be the long-term starter here. So number 4 on the hard buys list here at running back, we have Ezekiel Elliott. The cheapest running back 2 for contenders available on the market right now. I cannot believe I'm talking up Ezekiel Elliott in 2024, but I view him as Derrick Henry light. Yeah, he's likely washed. I don't think Ezekiel Elliott is a great player anymore, but he literally posted 65 targets on the Patriots last year while sharing a backfield with Ramondre Stevenson. You never used to be able to get volume at running back this cheap. In an elite offense, potentially, with the Cowboys, what if he mumbles and stumbles his way to 3.7 yards per carry and 13 rushing touchdowns? He's going to be a guy that you can use for RB2 production, flex production on a low investment running back build. He is virtually a free RB2 flex play, in my opinion. For 0 RB teams, again, Rico Dowdle is fine, I guess, but I don't actually view him as a significant threat to Ezekiel Elliott. He was an undrafted free agent. He hasn't been that spectacular. Again, he looks okay in spurts, but he can't carry a big workload, in my opinion. Ezekiel Elliott, they're going to feed their former workhorse. Even if he's washed, even if he averages 3.5 yards per carry, he is going to be the goal line back, and that is the role that I want in this offense. Next, we get into the soft buys at the running back position, and a lot of these guys I talked about in the video in May, as well as in the video in January, I believe, the first time I did this this trade targets by position video. So I'm going to skim over some of these guys. If you want bigger arguments on them, go back to the video in May. Rashad White, J.K. Dobbins, Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler, Ty Chandler, and Tyrone Tracy I discussed in the last video. Rashad White, third-year running back, 80 target upside, vastly improved offensive line, better scheme with Liam Cohen coming in. He won't be running so hesitant. He's going to have to run more decisively, and continuity with a check-down friendly quarterback. I think Rashad White in redraft might be a little overvalued in casual leagues, but in Dynasty, I actually think he is a pretty solid option. Bucky Irving doesn't scare me. Whoop-de-frickin' do. He's small. He's unathletic. He sucks in pass protection. He's a change of pace back. He is a replacement for Chase Edmonds. This is Rashad White's backfield. I'm a Buccaneers fan. Trust me, I've been following what this team has said about this backfield situation for a while. Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler, I talked about them in the last video. Maybe they're just hurt last year. Maybe new teams, change of scenery. They look like their old selves. I don't think that's likely because they're older running backs with touches under their belt, but I think in very, very sharp leagues only, they're basically free. Nobody wants Tony Pollard. Nobody wants Austin Eckler. I drafted Tony Pollard in like the 13th round of a Dynasty startup in a really sharp league format. That is how cheap these guys could end up being, and they could be RB2 production pieces for a contending roster, so definitely because their value is in the stinker right now, I think Pollard and Eckler are interesting. Ty Chandler, Tyrone Tracy, both high value handcuffs this year with pass catching upside. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Ty Chandler in Minnesota and Tyrone Tracy in New York could actually outproduce the starters ahead of them and just outright win their backfield job because they're young upside guys who can catch the football. So those guys are interesting to me as dart throws, throw-ins to trades as well. Number 6, soft buy here we have at the Dynasty running back position is Trey Benson, and I think he could be the next elite Dynasty running back, and that's why I'm buying him right now. James Conner, over the age, over the touch apex for running backs. Trey Benson was drafted in round 3 by the Cardinals. He was my RB1 in the 2024 class. Benson is explosive. He can break tackles. He has elite speed. He has a chance to be a breakout star and a top 5 Dynasty running back, and he's very affordable right now. You can get him as an early second-round pick. And as soon as he takes over this backfield, which could be midway through the season, could be early in the season, James Conner probably takes a decent amount of work right away. But his age, the team commitment by drafting Trey Benson, and his injury history indicate it's really only a matter of time, in my opinion, before this is Benson's backfield. So before that happens, you want to invest in Trey Benson because once that happens, he's going to be a guy that is valued as a top 6, top 10 at the very least Dynasty running back. And I am trying to get ahead of that curve with Trey Benson because I believe the guy is super talented. So he's a guy that I'm buying right now. Javonte Williams, again, I mentioned Audric Estime already. Javonte Williams is kind of a soft buy as well because Sean Payton's starter is cheap because it's unknown. Like I mentioned, it's just on this backfield in general. I want the starter. Javonte was once priced as a top 15, top 20 Dynasty running back. There's been shaky reports about him being cut, not having a role. That has caused his price to really decrease on the market. But if he is the same player pre-ACL tear that he was before, and again, remember, he is coming second year removed from his ACL tear back in 2022, he could be a huge value. I didn't think I'd be in on him because I love Estime so much, but I'm actually shocked at how quickly the market has tumbled him down the rankings, and he's the RB33 in Dynasty according to our community rankings and Keep Trade Cut. He is worth a swing at that price. Maybe a big contract year where he's healthy leads to a solid payday, just like DeAndre Swift had happen to him last offseason. So for me, I feel pretty confident in Javonte Williams, but it's only because of the price tag. I'm not super in on him just in general. I just think the price tag is low enough that I'm willing to take the shot. Number 8, we have Brian Robinson, boring depth running back, but maybe actually a value because if Austin Eckler is washed, we got a hammer goal line running back for a potentially up-and-coming offense where defenses will be focused on Jaden Daniels and stopping Jaden Daniels' rushing ability. And usually when you have power backs with elusive quarterbacks, it makes it tough on defenders, and the efficiency of said power back goes up. So I like Brian Robinson to potentially have a good efficient season this year. Nick Chubb, also a soft buy for me. I've talked about him so many times, but he has a 10% chance to go Adrian Peterson 2012 because he's just that talented. I talk about him all the time, so I'll skip the he could be the outlier narrative, but the bottom line is if he's available for third-round rookie picks right now, which indicates he is, given his price tag, he is worth a swing because he is a walking freak show. If I'm going to bet on one guy to have a monster season coming off of a blown knee, it is going to be Nick Chubb. I know he's not really healthy right now, but that is why it's a good buying window. People are pessimistic. As soon as he starts hitting and breaking some of these timelines that he needs to hit, he is not going to be this cheap anymore. You're going to have to pay a mid-second for him, and at that price tag, I'm probably out. If you can get him for a third-round pick right now, Nick Chubb is a good upside swing. I've drafted him in like the 14th, 15th round of startups this offseason because of how cheap he is. And then finally, the buys at the running back position taper off here with Dameon Pierce, who was a top 12 Dynasty running back just a year ago, so I might remind you of that. Maybe he's not a good fit for this scheme with Bobby Slowick. Maybe he sucks. Maybe he was hurt. I'm not exactly sure. But Joe Mixon is a lot closer to washed version of Ezekiel Elliott, like I talked about already, at this point in his career. Mixon is well over the age apex. He's well over the touch apex. Pierce is a premier handcuff at the very least, with an ability to potentially compete for touches in this backfield in an offense where if Mixon misses time or if he's able to carve out a role, Dameon Pierce, this is an elite team. This is an elite offense. We know they're going to score points. So whoever is starting at running back is going to be super valuable. So Dameon Pierce, as a really, really cheap dart throw, 20th plus round startup pick, I do believe he is a good upside swing because we've seen him be good in the NFL before, and we know that the starter in front of him is old and potentially prone to injuries as a result. So moving into the sells at the running back position. Again, running back and wide receiver are going to be the bulk of this video. Quarterbacks and tight ends a little bit more appropriately priced. Some of the sells at the running back position are hard sells just because their teammates are buys. Zach Moss, of course, teammate is a buy. Chase Brown, in my opinion. And then Jerome Ford, teammate is a buy. Nick Chubb, in my opinion. I like those guys a lot better. And Moss and Ford are guys who are priced as the more expensive options. I don't buy the values from the year previous, right? Zach Moss was a great value last year if you bought him. Jerome Ford, same thing. But you're better off cashing out on running backs like this, who, in my opinion, benefited from chaos of the NFL season and their middling talents, rather than holding them and hoping they can do it again. That's just my opinion on these type of running backs, and that's why I'm not buying into Zach Moss being a starter for Cincinnati or Jerome Ford being the starter for Cleveland. I think both backfields have a chance to have the backups be the better options, which is why I'm investing in the cheaper option in Chase Brown, in Nick Chubb, and even into Deontay Foreman in the Cleveland backfield there. Kendre Miller, I've discussed before. I'm not even convinced he's good. Alvin Kamara is still there to soak up all the valuable work. So what is Kendre Miller's role? Kendre Miller is a handcuff with a small standalone role who could be a long-term starter, sure, but that's no different than way cheaper versions of Kendre Miller's archetype, like Ray Davis in Buffalo, Dameon Pierce, who I just mentioned, Audric Estime, who I mentioned already, Tyler Algier, J.K. Dobbins, and Tyrone Tracy. Those guys are all basically Kendre Miller, only way cheaper because Kendre Miller has a little bit of unknown because he was a decent prospect and he's coming into his second year. I'm not convinced that he's going to start for this team at any point. Alvin Kamara is still there and he's still playing at a pretty decent level. Kenneth Walker is the new addition to this group. He was not in the last video as a sell. The reason he's a sell for me now is the more that I break this guy down, the more I'm convinced he's just destined to finish as like RB21 in fantasy every year, because he is not really the type of guy that's going to get you anything more than 6th or 7th place in your league. The new offense coming into Seattle is likely more pass heavy. It's a new coaching staff that has no allegiance to Kenneth Walker as the lead back. Zach Charbonnet is a more efficient, in between the tackles, down-to-down consistency guy with bigger size and more pass catching upside. I'm not saying Charbonnet is a huge buy necessarily. I just don't think that the most expensive option in this backfield should be far and away Kenneth Walker. I think they should be closely priced together. Walker also appears to be like the type of player that, like DeAndre Swift, coaching staffs seem to sour on because he misses the easy runs. He looks for big plays. He's great at creating big plays, but he doesn't always get what's there. And maybe this new coaching staff values that consistency that Zach Charbonnet can bring. I think these guys are going to cannibalize each other. I think it's going to be a 50-50 backfield. So I will just take the cheaper option, which is Zach Charbonnet. So for me, Kenneth Walker is a guy that I'm selling based basically on name value and that kind of thing because he was a high rookie pick when he came out. Now let's get into the soft sells. Again, these guys are more league dependent, price dependent type of sells, whereas the other guys I think I'm selling universally in most leagues. Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon, they're league dependent sells because if you're in a casual fantasy league, let me repeat, a casual dynasty league where people don't value age, people don't really know exactly how to value rookie picks, and it's very closely tied to how people would value Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon in redraft leagues, then Henry and Mixon are sells because if you can get an early second-round pick or better, potentially a first-round pick for these guys, they are definitely sells in that type of league format. However, if you play in leagues like me, where nobody wants aging running backs, then Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon are fine holds in that format for contenders. Zamir White, kind of same thing, because the types of leagues that like aging, productive running backs are going to love Zamir White as well because he projects for a lot of volume. Volume is king, boomer central type of league formats. He's on a bad offense. He's a subpar talent. Other backfield options to pivot to if he's disappointing. Alexander Mattison has been efficient in the past. Dylan Lauby's an interesting pass-catching prospect to take away that work. Zamir White is a fine option. Don't get me wrong. If you can get Zamir White for a late second-round pick, he's a fine RB3 for your contending roster. But some people view this guy as a potential league winner, and your goal is to find those dynasty managers in your league. Because if people think he's a league winner, they might be willing to pay an early second or better for him as well. And that's when I would be selling Zamir White. I have come around to him a little bit because he was a hard sell in the last video that I did, but I do think he's still the type of guy that I would want to shop and see what I can get for him. I sold him in one league with Jackson Smith and Jigba to get all the way up to J.J. McCarthy. Zamir White is like a 10th, 11th round startup pick. JSN, 5th, 6th round startup pick. I got up to J.J. McCarthy, who's like an early 4th rounder in startups for me. That was the type of trade that I was okay doing. Again, if you can make trades with Zamir White as a package or maybe selling him straight for an early second, that is what I'd be looking to do. David Montgomery, I think, is a sell altogether in all formats for me because paying for previous year's touchdown production notoriously is almost always a losing proposition because touchdowns are never sticky year over year. Remember Jamal Williams in 2022, how great of a season he had. How did he look last year? He looked like a washed up running back because he's older. David Montgomery's price actually just doesn't make any sense. In redraft leagues, he goes after Henry, Mixon, and Kamara, who, yeah, he's slightly younger than those guys, but he's going way higher in Dynasty than those guys who project better in redraft. When you're over 27 years old, I don't really care that you're a year younger than a 28-year-old running back. Once you get to 26, 27, the age cliff is not linear. You fall off a cliff from a value perspective. Once you're 26, 27, you're never gaining value again in Dynasty. You just want production at that point. So for me, David Montgomery, yeah, he's a little bit younger than Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, and Joe Mixon. I would rather have those other guys because they project better in redraft than David Montgomery does. And as I've talked about before, when you have a second-year running back like Jahmyr Gibbs, who was a top 15 NFL draft pick, traditionally a guy that talented will take a bigger role in his second year, and that means that he will command a bigger share of the backfield. So if you get 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns out of David Montgomery, I would consider that a win. But again, he's not going to have a huge receiving role. We're talking like 10, 11 PPR points per game. That is replacement level RB3 production, which I would not pay a RB2 dynasty price tag for a 27-year-old running back who's going to give me replacement level flex production on his best case scenario. That is how I view him, and you can sometimes get early to mid seconds for guys like David Montgomery, depending on the market. Again, if you want a running back like this, go buy Joe Mixon or Derrick Henry. They have better projections. They have higher redraft ceilings. Yeah, they're a bit older, but I would rather just get the better projection at that point in time. And then finally on the soft sells at running back here, we have Marshawn Lloyd and Braylon Allen, pure handcuffs with talent question marks in my opinion. Again, they're okay propositions, but Josh Jacobs is the guy for me in Green Bay. Yeah, Marshawn Lloyd might carve out a role, but all of the valuable touches are going to Josh Jacobs unless he's injured, and Lloyd was a shaky prospect to begin with. Questionable instincts, questionable profile. He's flashy, he has athleticism and big plays, but he's not the type of guy that a consistent coaching staff like Matt LaFleur and the Green Bay Packers are going to give a full workload to. I just don't see that happening. I think he's destined to become like a Alexander Madison type long-term in Dynasty, and I don't think he has a huge ceiling, so I'd rather just cash out on a guy like this for a guy with a ceiling. Braylon Allen just isn't good, in my opinion. When I scouted him as a prospect, he didn't run with power. He didn't run with patience. He doesn't have the best elusiveness for his size. He's just a big back who's big and athletic to some degree. Breece Hall, never leaving the field. I hate to break it to you guys, but Braylon Allen only sees the field if Breece Hall gets injured, and Isaiah Davis, Israel Abanikanda, not convinced they don't make that a committee. So what really is the upside here for Braylon Allen? Take swings on him all you want, but to me, I can cash him out for like better options. I'd rather have an early third-round pick than Braylon Allen. And right now, you should be able to get that on the open market. So for me, Braylon Allen, just not the type of guy that I want to invest in. Pivoting over to the wide receiver position, I know running backs took up a lot of this video, but I do think we're getting into the time of year where running back production is starting to become something I want to buy, as well as, you know, the wide receiver position is a lot more appropriately priced, so it should take less time here. Josh Downs, straight up baller, honestly. He's been a hard buy for me a couple videos in a row now. A.D. Mitchell comes into the Colts, and it opens up a buying window. So that's why I'm buying Josh Downs, is because A.D. Mitchell was drafted, and it cheapened his price. He just posted 770 yards and 2 touchdowns on 98 targets as a 21-year-old, despite his starting quarterback getting injured for the entirety of the season, pretty much, and Michael Pittman having a great season, and Alec Pierce, who was drafted in the second round a year prior, being on the field more than him. So with Josh Downs, I look at his reception profile, the fact that he's separated as a 21-year-old at a 93rd percentile rate against man coverage is incredibly impressive. So for me, I know he's good. That's basically all I'm buying into Josh Downs. I know he's a good player. I get the semantics of the offense, pass heavy or not pass heavy. Michael Pittman is there. To me, I just want a good player at a wide receiver 45, 50 price tag. It's just too cheap for me for Josh Downs. That is why I'm buying into him. Now let's get into the soft buys at wide receiver. Big list of guys here. A lot of rookies on here too. Xavier Worthy and Ladd McConkey's Dynasty ADPs don't really make sense because in underdog drafts, in redraft leagues, they're going about as high as they're going in Dynasty, and they're 20, 21, 22-year-old wide receivers. 5th, 6th round picks on underdog, where all the sharp drafters are drafting, indicates that they project very well year one. While Dynasty is long-term focused, we know how predictive rookie year production can be. So if these guys are going high in redraft leagues and we're projecting them to be good right away, they're going to end up skyrocketing up the boards in Dynasty rankings. Elite quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, potentially the future number one receivers of their team. For each of these guys, they're huge swings. Yeah, you could take Michael Pittman Jr. instead of them, or you could take DK Metcalf instead of them and just feel safe about the guy that you got. But I think the upside here is that these guys become top 15, top 12 Dynasty wide receivers if they hit. So for rebuilders, yeah, I'm taking the swing on these players because the sharps indicate that they project well year one, and if they perform in year one, they're going to end up really skyrocketing in Dynasty value. Christian Kirk, also one of the more easy smashes for contenders in startups that I've ever seen. Contenders, I mean, take Christian Kirk in the startup draft, trade mid-seconds for him because he is a PPR animal on one of the league's most pass-heavy offenses in Jacksonville, and both additions at wide receiver, Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabriel Davis, are deep threats. They're not the type of guy that are going to take targets away from Christian Kirk's area of the field, and neither of Brian Thomas or Gabriel Davis have ever been the number one receiver of their team before, so it's very possible that they're low target share, big play guys. Christian Kirk is just good. He has a connection with Trevor Lawrence. He has been the dude in this offense from a target share standpoint, and I believe Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk both stay healthy this year and bounce back in a big way. Christian Kirk just 2 years ago had 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns on this offense, had a red zone connection with Trevor Lawrence in 2022, and he was 5th in red zone targets that season. They pivot all those red zone targets over to Calvin Ridley, and look what happened. The offense didn't look the same. I think they're going to get back to basics, use their PPR stud. He has a chance to be a very solid 13, 15 point per game guy that you got in an 8th, 9th, 10th round of a startup, or you traded a mid-second round pick for, especially in leagues that I play in where it's 3 wide receiver, 3 flex leagues. Christian Kirk is going to be one of the biggest values in Dynasty startups this year, in my opinion. Again, look at his redraft price tag. On Underdog Drafts, where the sharp drafters are going right now, he is a 4th round redraft pick. And you don't get 4th round redraft picks who are 27 years old very cheap this often. So I am definitely taking the plunge on him. All these other aging wide receivers too, also good values if you guys are trying to win this year. Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, all different price points, mind you, but they all represent good wide receiver buys, especially, again, in leagues where it's 3 wide receiver, 3 flex, PPR type of scoring format. Devontae Adams, 2nd round redraft pick. So the fact that he's available for less than a 1st round Dynasty rookie pick is definitely a good price tag to buy if you're trying to win the championship this year. Amari Cooper is a 4th rounder. Again, you don't have to pay 1st round rookie picks for these guys. You can probably get them for early 2nd rounders, potentially less, depending on how sharp your league is. And they have wide receiver 2 floors with wide receiver 1 upside. So definitely 2 guys that I really like this year. Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins, both Tennessee Titans. They're in one of the sneakiest, most pass-heavy offenses in the NFL this year. Will Levis, Brian Callahan, these type of dudes, they're going to air the ball out in 2024. People think that this is the Mike Vrabel Titans still. It's definitely not. They are going to throw the ball like crazy. The Bengals have been one of the most pass-heavy offenses in the league. That is where Brian Callahan comes from. And they didn't even have Burrow last year, and they were still one of the more pass-heavy offenses in the league. I think they're going to let it rip with Will Levis. He's got a big arm. It is very possible this offense is also very concentrated, too. Could you name another established pass catcher other than Calvin Ridley, other than DeAndre Hopkins? Treylon Burks. I mean, Tyler Boyd is probably going to have some targets as well. Chig Okonkwo, not really. I mean, they're going to throw to Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard as well. But to me, I look, if they throw the ball 600 times this year, they could very easily have 130 of those targets go to DeAndre Hopkins, 140 of those targets go to Calvin Ridley, and those guys are going to be really good payoffs at their current price tag right now. You can get Ridley for a mid to late 2nd round pick. You can get Hopkins for a late 2nd round pick, potentially even a 3rd rounder. And those guys are definitely good veteran buys for those of you guys that are contending. Now let's look at undervalued rookies too. I mean, Xavier Legette, Jalen Polk, and Jalen McMillan, all top 12 wide receivers for me pre-NFL draft from a talent standpoint. So I liked their profiles and their film. Jalen Polk and Xavier Legette have no established wide receivers in their current cores. They could be the number 1 of their team as rookies. And that's not really baked into their price tag right now. Yeah, Xavier Legette had flaws as a prospect. Jalen Polk had flaws as a prospect. But both guys were drafted in the top 40 picks of the NFL draft, indicating that their teams very much believe in them, and I believe in them too because I like their film. Again, wonkier analytical profiles, but good film is something I'm relying on at these price tags. Again, you don't really have to pay a whole lot, mid-2nd round, late 2nd round picks for these guys. Jalen McMillan has a chance to be a solid producer this year who has long-term appeal, more so for rebuilding teams because I mean, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are great players, but they're getting older, and they'll probably teach him everything because they're just true pros who don't care about how many targets they get. So they'll teach him everything that they know about playing the wide receiver position at a high level. And Jalen McMillan is drawing rave reviews in camp right now. So a very solid chance that he ends up way more expensive than this after training camp. And all 3 of these guys really could end up way more expensive than this. So that's why I'm buying it on them now. Now we move into the hard sells at wide receiver. Michael Pittman Jr., DK Metcalf, I've spoke on before. Both guys are solid wide receiver 2s. I like their projections this year, but if they don't have any value accumulation potential and they're wide receiver 2s, wide receiver 3s on down seasons, there's not really a reason to draft these guys or hold them in startups. You're better off taking Pittman and Metcalf, adding something, getting a better receiver, or if you're a rebuilder, selling these guys for the aforementioned Xavier Worthies, Ladd McConkeys, those type of guys who have more upside appeal for your rebuild. There's lots of target competition for both guys. I think Josh Downs is a good player. A.D. Mitchell has a lot of upside. On the Seattle side, I like JSN to potentially take a step this year. Tyler Lockett is still there. I'm worried about their target shares. I'm worried about how good of production they're going to give you. And if they're not giving you great production, they're bound to lose value as 27-year-old wide receivers. They're fine in certain builds. Again, if you're in a deeper wide receiver league and you just need the production, I get it. But if I have them in a startup, I'd want to tier up. I'd want to tier down potentially and collect some picks. They're just in a range of wide receiver where I just don't want to be investing. I want to be investing in the higher range of wide receiver where they're going. Terry McLaurin and Stephon Diggs are also both hard sells for me. Again, they're comfy clicks with name value, just like Pittman and DK Metcalf. I get why people are clicking on them, but they're not upside clicks who can gain value, and they're not needle-moving producers either. Terry McLaurin is a wide receiver 3. He always has been. He always will be. He's 29 years old, and even though Jaden Daniels is an upgrade, quote unquote, at quarterback, he's a rush first quarterback. I don't know how many times this quarterback position has to get upgraded before we finally admit that Terry McLaurin is just not going to ever be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. He's a good wide receiver in real life, but Sam Howell led the NFL in pass attempts last year, and Terry McLaurin had one of his lowest finishing seasons. Yet again, he was a wide receiver 3 in points per game. So I don't really know why we're doing this thing with Terry every single year that he's finally going to take the step forward. He is 29 years old. He is going to be a wide receiver 3 this year. It's always what he's been, and he's going to continue to lose value. So again, in deeper leagues where you need a lot of wide receivers, you can get him with a 9th, 10th round pick. That's fine. But where he's going is not there. He is going higher than that, indicating that he has value accumulation potential, which I do not believe he does. Stephon Diggs is older. Yeah, he's fine, I suppose, in sharp leagues when he falls, but everybody kind of knows that he fell off a little bit last year. And people somehow think that Nico Collins and Tank Dell aren't going to really give him a run for his money in terms of overall target share, a guy that he never really had to compete with in Buffalo. So for me, sell him on name value in more casual leagues. But again, it depends on the league. Stephon Diggs, I've seen him fall really, really far in some sharper leagues where people recognize that Nico Collins is better than him and Tank Dell could be better than him. So for me, I think Stephon Diggs is the type of guy that is really, really league dependent. Ricky Pearsall, I also have listed as a hard sell here because he is valued really highly right now, and I think his value is bound to fluctuate. If you have Ricky Pearsall, you're probably going to need to be okay with ups and downs to his value, and for me, because he wasn't a very good prospect, I'm not okay with that. I understand that going into the season, we all know that Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle are going to eat into his early season production. But at the same time, it still caused JSN's value to go down when we knew going into the season that Metcalf and Lockett would eat into his production. Ricky Pearsall is a much worse prospect than JSN was. So there will be buying opportunities for Ricky Pearsall come mid-season, end of the season, when we figure out how this wide receiver core is going to look long term. If he looks great, I will buy high and take my L. But to me, I think he is the type of guy that if you drafted him in your rookie draft, you could probably cash out for a mid-second rounder or potentially better. I would just rather have Jalen Polk or Xavier Legette or some of the other guys that were drafted around him. So for me, I probably would cash out on slick Rick Pearsall. Jameson Williams, also a hard sell for me. He's just objectively a bad player. Like, I don't know where we got this idea that Jameson Williams is good, but he has 395 yards in 18 career games. And I don't care about the excuses. I really don't care. I don't care that he tore his ACL his final year of college. He still played as a rookie and did nothing. I don't care that he got himself suspended because he's a knucklehead for gambling on team property. He didn't do anything last year, and he was a top 15 NFL draft pick who couldn't beat out Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond for snaps. So I don't care that Jameson Williams has upside. He probably doesn't. There's a good chance he's just not a good player. So I'm selling him for whatever I can get for him. I'll take all the camp hype I can get for Jameson Williams if I have him because I can get more for him in a trade. Then we move on to soft sells. We have Jalen Waddle as a soft sell here, and that's only because I view him as just mispriced. I mean, he's a good player. He's a great player, actually. He's just priced over Rome Odunze, Brandon Ayuk, Drake London, and Chris Olave, which I just prefer those players. So it's nothing against Jalen Waddle. I just think that the guys that are behind him, I prefer to him because they are potential number one receivers for their team, and Jalen Waddle is stuck behind Tyreek Hill. So that's the difference between those guys. Waddle's the safer proposition probably, but I prefer those other guys and their upside a little bit more. And then Marvin Mims I have listed as a soft sell as well. Again, he's just a rotational player in my opinion. Highly doubt that he becomes anything for the Broncos aside from an occasional spike week king. I think that long term they're going to be, if Courtland Sutton stays there, he's going to be the number one receiver, the X receiver. Troy Franklin, who I believe in, you guys know that, is going to be their Z receiver. I think Josh Reynolds is going to work in as well, and maybe Marvin Mims carves out a slot receiver role. But to me, I don't view him as much upside as some people think he has. I thought he was a little bit of an overrated prospect and just kind of shined in analytical models because he produced at a young age, but he had freaking Caleb Williams. That's why he produced at a young age at Oklahoma. So let's move on to the quarterback position here. The hard buys, again, we're going to skim through these really fast because I've talked about all of these guys ad nauseum. Drake May, single most scrutinized elite quarterback prospect I've ever seen. Stud quarterback, elite arm, who can ran for 800 plus yards coming out of college as a sophomore. I don't know how he isn't a top 2-round startup pick. I really don't know how it's happening. People are doing the same thing that they did with CJ Stroud last year, and they're going to regret it. Only this time, Drake May can actually run, unlike CJ Stroud, so they could even regret it even more than they're currently regretting it right now. The Patriots stink. I get it. It's keeping his price low. It won't forever. Draft him now or trade for him now because he is going to go up in value. I feel very confident that Drake May is one of the best buy lows in all of Dynasty right now. People message me all the time saying, I got Drake May at 508 my startup. I'm like, that is absolutely ridiculous. He should be a 2-3 turn pick, exactly where Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors are going right now, and he's just simply not. He is a huge, huge value at this point in time. Number 2, Deshaun Watson, shit person discount, right? Nobody likes Deshaun Watson, the person, but we don't get rushing quarterbacks with elite top 5 seasons at this cheap of a price tag. It is uncomfortable as fuck clicking on Deshaun Watson in a startup. I get it. I would love to say, sell Deshaun Watson for anybody willing to give you a first-round pick, but nobody is giving you that right now. Nobody. If you sold Deshaun Watson for a first-round pick, consider yourself the luckiest person on planet Earth because he is available for mid to late seconds right now. That is his price tag on the open market, and at that price tag, I'm okay swinging the bat on Deshaun Watson because he does have a big contract. The team wants to see him be successful because they have all this money tied up in him, and he has been an elite NFL quarterback for multiple years before. It's not like he was a flash in the pan. He was a legit stud that all of our favorite teams, myself included, would have been happy to have build around for the next 10 years. He just had so much shit go wrong, and right now we're getting a huge discount because of all the shit that went wrong. So for me, Deshaun Watson, again, before, wasn't in on him. Now his price tag is at a point where I'm okay taking the swing. Like I said, Aiden O'Connell, also a really cheap quarterback option that if you need this year's Sam Howell, I do think Aiden O'Connell could be that guy. I don't think the Raiders are going to win many games, and even if Gardner Minshew starts the season and wins that job out, which isn't a guarantee, I think Aiden O'Connell could be better than him. Why not see what you have with Aiden O'Connell? Because there's a very good chance the Raiders are going to draft a quarterback next year, and if you want to know if you have a quarterback already, why not do the guy that actually was okay as a rookie, as a 4th-round pick? I think Aiden O'Connell is actually a decent player and could help this offense move the football. He's got weapons. He's got Adams. He's got Bowers. He's got Mayer. He's got Myers. He's got dudes to throw the football to. So if Aiden O'Connell wins that job or starts at any point this season, especially in Dynasty best ball leagues where you don't have to choose when to start him, I think he could be a decent value. Moving on to the soft buys at quarterback, we have Caleb Williams and J.J. McCarthy. I mean, they're both just set up for success. They have elite talent around them. That is why they're soft buys for me. We talked about them ad nauseum in the Dynasty rookie offseason portion there after the draft, so that's why they're buys for me. Trevor Lawrence makes his 1 millionth appearance on this video this offseason, so I'm not going to talk about him, but same thing I said for Christian Kirk. Bounce back season. Trevor Lawrence was 8-3 before the Jags suffered all those injuries, including to Lawrence himself, ankle, shoulder injuries, all that kind of stuff. Just got a big contract. To me, still very undervalued. Daniel Jones is an interesting quarterback 3 option for contenders right now, health pending. He's a fine rushing quarterback 2 when he's healthy. Offense might open up with Saquon gone and Malik Neighbors in. That's something that gives me a little bit of hope. He does have a big-time contract tying him to the team, but Hard Knocks indicates to me that they're probably going to put more on his shoulders, and that's partially why I'm a little in on Daniel Jones at his current price tag. Because, I mean, if you need a quarterback 3 for your team, and you can send the 211 or something like that for him, I think you could definitely do worse than Daniel Jones right now. Pivoting to the sells, we have Justin Herbert, and I really feel uncomfortable saying this because Justin Herbert's an elite NFL quarterback, but his redraft price is scaring me off of his Dynasty price, and especially how expensive he is in Dynasty. He's like a top 10 pick or a top 12 pick in startups. You can get better production according to Underdog ADP and how the Sharps are kind of projecting this season at a much younger age and cheaper with Anthony Richardson. You can get, a similarly elite NFL quarterback like Joe Burrow for the same price tag. You can get Jordan Love or Kyler Murray for cheaper than Justin Herbert, and they all project better than Justin Herbert does this year because of the run-heavy nature of the Chargers offense, the fact that he doesn't have any established wide receivers. He's really disappointed at ADP for the last couple of years now, and that was with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Austin Eckler. So I'm a little concerned that Justin Herbert's a bit overvalued. Yeah, elite NFL quarterback, but is he an elite fantasy quarterback is the thing that I would come back to with Justin Herbert. So for me, if I can pivot to a similarly tiered Anthony Richardson, Burrow, Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, somebody like that, I would absolutely do it. Maybe you can get Trevor Lawrence plus for Justin Herbert, and you're getting a better redraft projection there. Again, I know it's uncomfortable saying to sell an elite quarterback, but I do think you should be able to get a decent amount for him because he's an elite quarterback. So Jared Goff, also a guy that I'm selling right now. He doesn't actually deserve his contract. I feel like everybody knows that. The Terry of quarterbacks is basically what Jared Goff is. He's the Terry McLaurin of quarterbacks. He's locked in to be a starter, which is great. But selling the top of the mid QB2's territory like Jared Goff this year, like Daniel Jones last year, like Derek Carr 2 years ago, it has been a profitable strategy because these guys don't often have needle-moving production. They're just being drafted where they are because we feel safe and comfortable clicking on them during a startup draft where we already have one quarterback and we need a second. Run-heavy team where in this range, I would rather swing on J.J. McCarthy. I would rather swing on higher production pieces like Tua Tagovailoa and Dak Prescott, or if it really balls you want to swing a couple rounds later for a Bo Nix or a Will Levis or a Bryce Young. For me, Jared Goff just represents an area of the draft at quarterback where I'm better off taking other position groups. And where he's going in terms of overall value is someone I'd actually be willing to cash out on. If you don't need the production, definitely cash out on him. But even if you do need the production, use Jared Goff to tier up. Use him to get up to Dak Prescott. Use him to get up to Tua Tagovailoa. Use him to get up to Brock Purdy. Use him to get up to Kyler Murray. Use him to get up to Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, those type of guys. That is what I would be doing with Jared Goff right now. He's not the type of guy that I would love to hold on my roster, unless maybe you have the Amon-Ra St. Brown or Sam Laporta stack with him. He's just not the type of guy I want to hold. Justin Fields, I mean, why are we still doing this? The entire NFL told us what they think of Justin Fields. 31 teams passed on him via trade. He went for a conditional day 3 pick to the Steelers and is currently being stomped by Russell Wilson in the quarterback competition. So I would be stunned if he's ever a starter ever again. This is Trey Lance Copium 2.0. If you like Justin Fields, the player, when he's healthy, I do too. He's a really talented fantasy quarterback. He runs the football, but I don't think he's ever going to be a starter again. So that's why I'm not buying into him at this point in time. If you can sell him to the rare Justin Fields manager that actually believes, definitely go ahead and do it. Now, let's close this video out. Apologies for going a little bit long on this one. With the tight end position, we do have a bunch of buys here. The only hard buy is Tucker Kraft and then a number of soft buys there. Tucker Kraft is a hard buy for me because honestly, he simply checks boxes. I look at Tucker Kraft. He was a significantly better prospect than Luke Musgrave. I do not care that Luke Musgrave was drafted higher. I watched the film. I scouted the numbers. Luke Musgrave wasn't a good prospect. He was athletic, but so was Tucker Kraft. So Tucker Kraft, to me, better prospect, but he is dealing with a pec injury right now, which presents a buying window, which is why he is a hard buy for me right now. The second he's healthy, I'm confident he wins this starting job. When he was on the field last year as the Packers starter, he had 5 of his 9 games with 6+ targets. Luke Musgrave had 3 of 12 games with 6+ targets when he was the lead tight end there. The last 3 games when both of these guys were healthy, including 2 playoff games, Tucker Kraft outsnapped him 90%, 80%, and 85% to 15%, 27%, and 28%. I get Luke Musgrave was coming off of injury, but he was back on the field for a number of games going into the playoffs, and he was still being outsnapped by Tucker Kraft. I believe he has won this job out, and once he is healthy, he is going to take over that tight end role. So a couple rapid-fire tight ends that I'm buying as well. You have Brock Bowers. If you're buying an elite tight end, he was elite all 3 years of his college career. Alpha multiple day 2 wide receiver prospects at the University of Georgia. Ladd McConkey, A.D. Mitchell, George Pickens, Jermaine Burton. Brock Bowers was the number 1 of that offense, even with all of that NFL talent there. You're getting a discount on elite tight end talent. Right now, he's in our community rankings like tight end 4 or 5 in Dynasty right now because Devontae Adams is there, and he's a little bit older. I'm not really worried about him. Quarterback play, Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, not very good, but it'll be addressed at some point in Brock Bowers' career. Just buy into the ability here. I would not be shocked if Brock Bowers just had a great rookie season in spite of all that other stuff. Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, they're not world beaters, but they're good enough players to support Brock Bowers having a great tight end season as a rookie. If you're buying elite tight end production, George Kittle, Mark Andrews should be the guys that you're going after. You can get an age discount on both players. Both have been multi-time top 3 to 5 tight ends in redraft. Both guys are the primary red zone targets for great NFL offenses, and both guys have spike weeks, contending teams. These are my favorite 2 buys at the tight end position. If you have a great roster just needing a tight end, Mark Andrews, late 1st round pick, sayonara, it's done. And also George Kittle, early 2nd round pick, also a great option to go after as well. Dallas Goedert and Cade Otton, also soft buys for me right now because I think they're good, cheap production tight ends, especially if you guys play in Dynasty best ball leagues. I think they're really good for that. I know people have soured on both of these guys, but Cade Otton ran the most routes of any tight end in the NFL last year, and he was only a 2nd-year guy, so he he could still get better. He could still be a back-end tight end 1 this year, a mid-tight end 1 this year. I could see him being like this year's Dalton Schultz or this year's Jake Ferguson or something like that, where he's giving you solid production and people kind of just overlooked the usage because they don't like the player. And Dallas Goedert is like a cheaper version of George Kittle. Crowded offense. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are going to command their targets, but Goddard's going to have his weeks. So especially in best ball, I do think he's a very good option. He's guaranteed to be the number 3 of this offense, and he's going to have touchdown upside as well. So moving into the sells at tight end, we have Dalton Kincaid, Cole Kmet, and Isaiah Likely. Dalton Kincaid, he's a very good projection. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not convinced this guy is 100% an elite talent. If he is an elite talent, that's great. But on some platforms, and our community rankings is one of them, he's being valued over Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. So I can't get there. I cannot get there with Dalton Kincaid. I think he's a good projection. Him and Kyle Pitts are a similar bet to me, where if they're good, they're probably going to crush. But I don't know if either guy is legitimately a difference maker at tight end. So for me, if Dalton Kincaid is going that highly in your dynasty leagues, I would probably sell high on him and try and get a more proven asset. If you're a contender, like, go get Mark Andrews plus for Dalton Kincaid. If you're a rebuilder, I'd rather have Brock Bowers than Dalton Kincaid. So that's kind of where I'm at with him. Cole Kmet, a lot of talent was added to that Bears receiving core. Odunze and Keenan Allen to go along with DJ Moore. Cole Kmet's probably going to score some touchdowns here and there, but I view him as probably a little bit overvalued. And Isaiah Likely, I mean, he's always overvalued. I'm not really sure why we value him as like a top 15 dynasty tight end, because Mark Andrews is still there, and Mark Andrews isn't going anywhere. So until Isaiah Likely is on his own team where he can be the starting tight end, he is a tight end handcuff. And I'm not taking a tight end handcuff over starting NFL tight ends, even though he's pretty talented. I would say Likely he's a good player. It's just that I don't view him as a difference maker unless Mark Andrews misses time, which could happen, I guess, but I'm not going to count on that where he's currently going. So longer video. Again, I know I went a little long on this one, but hopefully I gave you some good trade targets to go out and send some offers for if you're a contender. Of course, there were some great ones in this one. If you're a rebuilder, also some great ones in this video as well. Like the video if you enjoyed. Comment down below any of your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. And of course, if you are a member of flockfantasy.com, you get access to this entire Dynasty trade value chart. You can see me and Danny's Dynasty rankings consensus. You can see, are these guys hard buys, soft sells, holds, hard sells? How much should you pay for them on the open market? The trade values that you guys saw on the screen during this video is how I value the player. So obviously, if you are selling them, getting that or plus would be ideal. Or if you're buying them, maybe you can get them for even less than what I put them as my valuation of those players. So that is kind of how the trade value chart works, but I think it's a great resource to use if you guys are making dynasty trades, because the worst thing that could happen is you trade a first-round pick for a guy that I valued as a late second-round pick. Like, that's something you don't want to happen, I'm sure. So that Dynasty trade value chart is a huge resource to you, and of course, it is available on flockfantasy.com. Tons of other content over there, all of our Dynasty rankings, Superflex, one quarterback, best ball rankings if you're doing drafts right now. Also, available is our rookie rankings, which are constantly updated. Our prospect models, 2025 running back prospects into the model to see how good this 2025 running back class is going to be. 2025 wide receivers, we already ranked them. I'm going to do the prospect model video this week as well. All that stuff is available on the site, flockfantasy.com, promo code FSE for 30% off, 7 days for free, and a free team review when you sign up as an annual mother flocker using that promo code FSE. I can break down your dynasty team. I can tell you which trades to make, how your team is looking. Are you contending? Are you rebuilding? Basically, your own Dynasty Decisions episode is what I will send to you for being an annual mother flocker on our site using promo code FSE. So if all that interests you, check it out down below. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.